How much did we have that mentality in our culture? I need more. I need bigger. And this man, it seems like he's making a really good decision because, what are you going to do with the crops? And that's actually where Jesus gets to the heart of it. What are you going to do with all of that plenty that you got? What are you going to do when you, who have received so much, find yourself simply desiring more and bigger? You have this man who makes his good business decisions. He finds security in his prosperity. I know many people. I know most people are very much like this man, finding security in prosperity. When you lose your job, when your 401k is shrinking, when you have a house value that is completely not related to reality, or at least the reality that you want it to be, your security starts to go downhill. Where will the money come from? We are people who can worry. We can worry pretty well because we oftentimes try to find security in prosperity. And so during those times in our own culture, in our own life here in the United States in the 20th, 21st century, times have been great. There have been some great times. There have been some terrible times. I was born into the gas crisis of the 70s, which I heard was really bad. I don't really remember it. And then things are down. The economy's down. Oh, it picks back up, and all of a sudden we're prosperous. We have all of this. And what happens with people? We can be secure, we can store up our treasures, we can say to our soul, I'm going to eat, drink, and be merry. And then it goes away again. And it comes back, and we don't learn. The judgment that Jesus says in the story that is for this man is that this man displayed a lack of richness to God. There was a lack of richness to God. He had all his prosperity, everything, had gone well in his favor. And his first inclination, his first desire, his motivation in life is, I've got to build bigger so that I can keep it for myself. Anybody guilty? Other than me? A couple of you. Good. It was like, I hope I'm not wasting their time. This lack of richness to God, this area of property, this has everything to do with how we follow Jesus. We can be merciful people, but it costs us. If you go back to the Good Samaritan, what does he have to do in the story? What does he do in the story? He pays for the guy. We can be people who listen to Jesus, but then we also have to listen to how he talks about giving your stuff away. But we can be people who ask Jesus for all sorts of things. But when we get them, what do we say? Your stuff has everything to do with following Jesus. And what you do with your stuff can often be a reflection of how we are following Jesus. And I say this, and I fully realize that amongst American Christians, when we talk about money in the church, it's the most uncomfortable topic. Christians don't like to talk about money. Jesus had no problem with it, so I'm going to be okay with it today. Following Jesus means for us adjusting our own priorities and our own attitudes about stuff. Do I need this? How many of you, when you go shopping, you impulse buy? Anybody impulse buyer? You're out there, you're in Target, and you're like, wow, that's a great deal. I impulse buy. It's very difficult to break, which is why I just choose not to go to the store. Lynn got an email from somebody yesterday saying, Target has toys 75% off. And I'm like, if I go, I'm just going to buy. and how much more pieces of plastic do my children need? How many more little trinkets that sometimes substitute actual love and care for my children do they need? How much? Adjusting our own priorities and attitudes about stuff is something that's pretty difficult. It takes some relentless personal interrogation of yourself. What am I spending my money on? What am I doing? Why am I choosing to spend my money on this when there's other things to spend it on? Why this instead of that? Why this instead of anything? What does it mean to follow Jesus with my stuff? Jesus isn't saying that you can't have stuff. He isn't saying that you don't get to have a home, you don't get to have a bed, you don't get to have a car. But he does desire you, as his followers, to think about what it is exactly you need. For the simple reason, we're going to talk more about this next week, because the guy who was sitting in the room chopping up the Bible verses actually chopped up this whole great section on trust. And you get a glimpse of it. Jesus desires his people to trust in him. And what can we do when we trust in him? Do I have to trust in Jesus as long as I have credit cards? Do I have to trust in Jesus about where my food's going to come from when I can go to the store and buy whatever I need? Do I have to trust in Jesus for anything? Do I? This is the challenge of the society that we have, and the society that we are going to continue to live in. We are being led to trust God with all of our soul, with all of our heart, with all of our mind, and with all of our stuff. What is it for you that you could box up and say, this is mine, I've got it, this is mine, I'm very protective of it, you can't have it, it belongs to me? What is it in your stuff that you won't let go of? What is it in your prosperity that you forget to be rich with? A couple of questions, and we'll finish with prayer. Are you more likely to trust in God when you have nothing or when you have plenty? Now think about that. Most of the time, people, what's the great dream of people in our society? We want to live a nice, comfortable, fairly middle-class, decent life. We want to have enough money to make sure our kids can go to college. If something happens with the car, we can get it fixed. We want comfort. Are you more likely to trust in God when you have nothing or when you have plenty? The second question is this: what would happen if you stopped? What would happen if you stopped accumulating, acquiring, possessing the thing that you desire to accumulate and possess? What would happen? What would you do with the money that you have? Jesus looks at this man who wants the inheritance divided. Give me mine. And he says, look, you have nothing right now. What would you do if you got that? How many lottery winners wished God they had never won the lottery? There's all sorts of stories all the time about these lottery winners. They go bankrupt. They end up spending everything. Their lives become a great big train wreck because they got everything they ever wanted and forgot to be rich to God. We can do the same thing, maybe on a smaller scale. We can get all we want and forget to be rich to God. And so Jesus is asking you as his follower, as you start to look at your own trust, what are you trusting in? We're going to, again, talk about that more next week and how Jesus says, here I am. I am the one that you can trust in. I am the one who desires to give abundantly to you. But I give abundantly for a reason. I give abundantly for life. May we trust in him. If you join me in prayer.